kind of weird to share all this stuff on YouTube. The door. So this incident happened at my father's funeral service. It was very small. The room we were in was also quite small, and there was another room just adjoining the room that we were in. And in that room, there was a door that was slightly ajar, just about like you see here. And at one point, the minister told everybody to stand. He said a little prayer, and everyone was bowing their heads, looking down at the floor, except for me. I was actually looking up at the door because this is what I saw. The door closed very, very slowly, all on its own. Now, I know you may think, oh, there must be an explanation for that. Like maybe there was a window open. No, there was no window open. And also, if someone would have closed the door, there would have been a hand reaching in and I would have seen that. Have there ever been any other instances of doors closing on their own? There have. And sometimes they have been at funeral homes, and when that happens, people might take it as a sign, or they might think it's something supernatural, or perhaps a spirit, who knows. But I really did wonder what was happening and how did it happen. The only other funeral I had ever been to was when I was a child. At the time I attended a Catholic school, and the nuns had our whole class go and visit this little baby that had died, and we all had to stand around and say a prayer for the baby. And from that day on, I had never seen another dead person. At the funeral for my dad, I would not look into the coffin. It was an open coffin. Everyone else went up and, knelt down, said a prayer. But I refused. I wanted to remember my father the way he was when he was alive. This was a couple of years before he passed away, holding this painting I made for his birthday. To me, this was a very strange occurrence. I wondered, is that my dad's spirit leaving the room? I know that sounds really crazy, but that is what I thought at the time. That was the door incident. Now let's go on to the next strange happening. By the way, Rocky's finally settled down. They were testing the fire alarms in the condo today. He was so scared, but it looks like he managed to get through. So brave, brave, brave kitty. Okay. Well, hey everyone, as the title suggests, this next strange incident took place inside a cemetery. Just jumped down. It's a very large cemetery here in Toronto called Mount Pleasant Cemetery. Oh, God.
All testing is completed for today. Please treat all tones.
I thought the fire alarm testing was all finished yesterday, but apparently not. Do you know how many times I've tried to start this video? It was three times. Today's strange incident takes place inside a cemetery, Mount Pleasant Cemetery here in Toronto to be exact. And it is a very large, very, very large cemetery. As you can see here, I drove by it the other day on the train and it just goes on and on. When I went there with a friend, of course, then it wasn't snowing, it was in the summertime, but I went there to look up the grave of a mutual friend. His wife had told us pretty well exactly where it was, where to go in, where to turn, and blah, blah, blah. I didn't really think we would need a map because the instructions seemed pretty good. Anyway, after about 20 minutes of looking for the grave site, which did not have a headstone because it was a cremation, so there was just a plaque on the ground. And we had just about given up, thought we'd come back another day. And when I turned around, there was this beautiful deer just standing there, maybe about 20 yards away, amongst all these headstones, looking at us. And I turned to my friend and I said, let's see if we can go up and pet him, or well, at least how close we can get, because it did not look frightened at all. So we started walking towards the deer. The deer never moved until we got about, I'd say, within 2 yards of it. Very, very close. And then the deer took off in the other direction. And this is the really strange part. When we looked down, there was Alistair's gravestone. The deer was standing at the very place where we had been looking all along. Well, hey everyone, I'm going to see if I can get through these last 3 segments all in one sitting without any more interruptions. This strange incident is something that happened over 30 years ago, and it has never happened since. Maybe it had something to do with that at the time when it happened. I was in another country. I was in Belgium, and I was staying with a cousin. I had gone there with my mother for a visit, and we were upstairs. It's a really old house. I was sleeping with my mom. We were in the same bed. She was actually turned the other way and snoring a little bit when it happened. And I remember just opening my eyes, and in through the door was not open, through the closed door came these 2, the best way I can describe them is they were like softly glowing white columns of light. Like there was no face or body or anything like that, but I had the distinct sense that these were 2 beings. It was not a scary experience at all. As a matter of fact, it felt kind of peaceful, and I was like very, very curious, and I was going to wake up my mother, but like I said, she was kind of in a very deep sleep, and so I didn't wake her up. But I wish she would have seen it, because in the morning, of course, when I told my mother and my cousin about it, they just laughed. They said I must have been dreaming. But these 2 columns of light, like I said, they just stood there hovering beside my bed. I think I even said hi, or who are you, or what's happening, or I don't remember my exact words, but no reaction. After about, I would say, a good 30 seconds, maybe 45 seconds, both of the columns of light just turned and just floated right back out through the same way they came in, right through the door. This has never happened since. If it did, I wouldn't really mind. And when I try to think, well, why did it happen only once? I think, well, maybe that was my grandparents, because when I left that country, I was a very young girl, and when I went back for the first time with my mother for a visit, they had both already passed away, and so I never ever saw them again. I had been very close to my grandparents. They lived just a couple of houses down the street from where we lived, and I would go there pretty well every Sunday for dinner, and they let me have my own little cup of tea in my little tea set. I don't expect anyone else to believe this. I think it's good to be skeptical, because like a lot of people, unless it happens to you, it's just too strange to believe. Okay, moving right along with the phone call. I'll start by saying that I grew up in a very, I'll just call it a turbulent household where nobody got along. My parents didn't get along with each other, and I couldn't wait to get out of the house, which I did at a very young age. As often happens, the years go by, and we actually ended up being very close in the end. My mother became one of my biggest supporters through all my ups and downs in life. She was always somebody I could call and talk to. And in later years, especially after I moved to Montreal, we were quite a distance apart. I saw her very rarely, and but I did call her. That's a little frog in my throat. I did call her every single night. One night I called her, and she just sounded kind of a little bit different. And I remember when she hung up, she said, "Be happy." And it's just the way she said it that also felt very strange. And it turns out that very night or the next night, because I only would call her at night, and when I called her the next day, there was no answer, and my mother had passed away in her sleep. And so when I went to the funeral, it was very sad, and when I got back home, all I could do was cry. And 3 or 4 nights later, 3 o'clock in the morning, the phone rang, and I picked it up, and there was no answer. Hello, hello, there was no answer. Hung up. 20 seconds later, the phone rang again. Hello, no answer. And this happened 3 times in a row and no answer. It was one of those old phones that had a call display on it, and when I looked down to see what the number was, there was no number, there was just an initial, and it happened to be the initial of the first letter of my mother's maiden name. And after that, the phone never rang again, but I had this strange feeling that it was my mother telling me that she was there and not to cry anymore, which I'm starting to do now, guys. And I'll be right back for the next segment. Stay tuned. All right, so here we go again with the last, at least the last one that I will make a video about, because there have been a couple more, but I am not ready to share those. So this last one I call the aura, and it also has to do with my mother. She came to visit me once in Montreal, and when she did, I took her to see the famous Notre Dame Basilica. It's very beautiful in there. It's where Celine Dion got married. My mother had always been a fan, so I thought she would be very interested in going there to see where Celine Dion had been married, and even just to look at the beautiful cathedral. The following year after my mom had passed, it was Mother's Day, and I thought I would go there, say a little prayer for my mom, and light a candle. Before I left, I was sitting quite a few rows back from where the candles were, and I took this picture. I'm not a particularly religious person. I'm more of a spiritual person, and I just felt like my mom's spirit was there with me. And when I look at this picture, I think this is an aura that represents my mother. Okay, now I realize this all sounds very morose. It's kind of weird to share all this stuff on YouTube, but I just want to document it because these are things that I have thought about a lot throughout the years. I'm sure that other people have had strange experiences too, and I can understand why they don't want to share them, because they won't be believed. Unless other people have been through the same thing, they just write it off as hallucination or being a little bit crazy, like I said before. So if you have any strange experiences you would like to share, just comment below, and I can assure you that I will not laugh or think that you are strange. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and I hope you all have a great day. Now they just started vacuuming out in the hallway. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but now is a really good time to stop.